If you've made it this far, you've made it to the very last video. Awesome job. Thanks for following along through the whole series. If you're new here, please subscribe. Go back through all the other videos. You can see this from the very beginning. However, this will be the final video of this one VR150 install. As you can tell, it took a lot more videos than I originally planned, but to keep the time down, that's what we had to do. What we're going to do now is we're going to reinstall the headlight, the grill, the bumper, the secondary cooler, the secondary reservoir, and go ahead and put the air intake tube and everything back on. Once we get done with that, we're going to be modifying these little coolant lines here. Okay, there's two different T's in there. One is an orifice T and the other one's a standard T. We will be relocating them in a way that all this fits after we've modified the cooling system. This is the last piece that has to be modified, and it's done after you put everything else on the truck. So you can go ahead and put your radiator cover on, you can go ahead and put your coolant reservoir back in, etc. So once all that's in, truck's buttoned up, then you're going to modify these. Be very careful with these T's. They are plastic and they have crimped on metal bands. So what I suggest to do is you cut the metal bands completely. If you were not around for the first video where we took this out, then you will probably watch this one and figure out how to put it back in. Connect all your electrical connectors that were removed. You will have one electrical connector left over in this install, and it's actually the one for the level in the coolant bottle. It will not matter though. It does not have to be connected, so don't worry. Tape the end of it up if you're worried about it. Push headlight in, put your 4 bolts back in, and move on to putting the grill in. After your headlight's installed, you're going to take your grill. Make sure these little gray clips are pushed on here, and also these little black clips have not popped out. A lot of times when you're leaning over the hood you can pull these off, but you'll need all 8 of those in there. Now this is going to take 8 of the black 10mm bolts. Put the grill in. Doesn't take a lot of pressure. Put your bolts in. Again, that's a 10mm. Tighten it up. You can move on to the bumper or the upper shroud, either way. Our grill is put in, torqued down. And now we're going to put in the upper radiator cover, shroud, whatever you want to call it. Make sure you have all your tools out from under it. I've been known to leave a wrench or something under there from time to time. Remember, this just gets the push pins put in it. And you lock in place, put the push pins in, and you're free to move to the next step. One thing I forgot to mention is one of the push pins is different. This one has a smaller head than the rest of them, and it's got a longer shank on it. This actually goes where the air duct comes up. So that one goes in here through both sets. Push them all down. It's my favorite part. I wait till last and I push them all down together. Some little things that I find amusement in. We're now going to install the secondary reservoir. See, you want to make sure this little clip is still on it. Make sure the little band clip's on it. You'll need your remaining 2 10mm bolts. And make sure the clamp is on, the factory clamp is on, sitting on this hose. Make sure all the other lines and wires and everything are out of the way over here. What I do is I push the hose on first. Once you hear that click, it's in place. You'll have a little coolant line here. needs to be connected. Do not want to forget that coolant line, as all your coolant will come running out when you go to fill it up. It is a little hard to get in there once you put the Vegas bottle on this side. Alright, once you get it on there, pop that down in place, put your 2 bolts in, and connect this hose. And move on. It's time to go ahead and put the intake and tube back on. Pull your tape off. Pull your rag out. Just check and make sure there's no trash in there, which there shouldn't be if you've got it covered up that good. And reinstall. Once you get this back on, make sure you connect this sensor. If you don't, it'll run great for the first time you start it, and then the check engine light will come on and it won't have any power. Made a mistake and left it off, pulled it out of the garage, and went to start it back up and had a check engine light. So you want to avoid that any way possible. Once it's connected, everything's good, we get to move on to our coolant lines. Alright, for the final portion here, I've went ahead and cut the bands off of these. So you got 2 orifices, or excuse me, you got 2 T's here. The one on the right, towards the driver's side, is a orifice. Pay very close attention to that one. Okay, this is just a standard T. The first thing the book has us doing is removing the short hose. Okay, there's your first T. I just leave that one in there till I'm ready for it. Make sure there's no damage on this hose here where the clamp used to be. What it tells us to do is take this fitting, this T-fitting, and rotate it. So it came out of there like this. We're going to put it back like this. So take 2 of your hose clamps. They come with the VMAC kit. Put them on the hoses. Put your T back in place. Again, make sure you have no cut marks or anything where it's going to leak if you use a die grinder to cut the bands off. And you can always cut the hoses back a little bit as well. Alright, after you got your first step, this next one is going to go towards the radiator. Alright, our next step says to remove the hose labeled rad. And don't know if you can see that. Come on, focus. Anyway, this is hose here. It says, on that orifice, it says it's got engine, rad, Vegas. So we'll take the radiator one off. And we're going to put it on this T here. You'll need another clamp. I made her to the ground. Thank God. Connect the hose, and I go back and tighten all these later, and then this will hook up directly to the radiator itself. Before you connect this into the radiator, we're going to modify it. We'll take our cutters and we're going to cut it right before it goes into the bend, and then we're going to cut a section. You're just cutting this one corner out of this hose. Okay, there's the hose back, and you got this end. Take your hose clamp, put it on here. Hose clamp, put it on here. the orifice that you removed, you're going to connect it where it says. So at the bottom here says radiator. Put that towards your radiator hose. And the side says engine. That goes off the engine hose here. Be careful not to break these. You cannot buy these individually. You have to buy all the hoses with this together, which adds, it's about $120 from the Ford place, maybe $130. I can't remember what I paid for it last time. They do get fragile with age, so just keep that in mind if you're putting it on the truck that's got some miles on it. Alright, final connection will be the hose from here over to your coolant bottle. Your final connection. The remainder hose you have, take the little S end, stick on your orifice, and you can do this two different ways. You can run it over here and connect it up like this. You can do like I do, and you can run it around the bottle, shorten the hose a little bit, and then connect it up that way. That's total preference to how you want to do it. I like to run it around the top of the bottle, come over, shorten it up, and put the hose on. You don't want it to kink, so just make sure you cut it in the right area. After that, go back and tighten all your little clamps up, and you are officially done underneath the hood. The only remaining thing left to do is connect the battery and fill the coolant. Alright, we've now reached the end, pretty much, of everything going to happen here. We're going to go ahead and put our battery cables in. I've already got the engine filled with coolant and checked all the levels and everything. Have not started it yet, so we're going to hook our battery cables up. We're going to go over everything, then we're going to start the engine up, check for clearances, and etc. But to do this, you just stick one cable in on each side. And I do stick a little bit of dielectric grease in after I put the bolt on it. It's a 14 millimeter for this one. Go ahead and tighten it down. And then you can't see it, but up here is the ground. You take your two grounds for your battery, connect them up top. And it's a 13 millimeter. And then you're officially ready to start the truck. So before starting the truck, make sure you fill the coolant as much as you can with Ford coolant. And then go back and just check for leaks. And what I do is I usually fill it up the day before. Next morning to come in, make sure there's no leaks in the system. So we're going to fire it up, warm the engine up, and I'm going to get the VMAC test tool installed so you can see how we set these things up. As you can tell, engine's now running. Check to make sure our belt's running true. Everything looks good. No rubbing. I do want to show you the VMAC test tool that is used to set these up. You can buy this kit from VMAC. Or one of their dealers, but it's an amazing tool, and all it is a hose, a bunch of fittings, and some orifices. But it connects on the end of connects on the air discharge of the AOST tank, runs to the gauge, and then there's a ball valve. Now, under this ball valve, there's an orifice, and they're actually all labeled based on CFM. So if you look at this one, it's 150 CFM, which is what this is, a VR150. So the theory behind this, and it's not 100% accurate, but it's very, very close, and it's great for setting up any air compressor regardless of brand. When I turn this on, it should go all the way up to regulated pressure. This gives us a chance to go ahead and set our regulated pressure, but from the factory, it should be around 150 psi. Excuse me. Once I open this up, the gauge will start to fall, the engine RPM will start to come up. What should happen is this gauge should maintain 100 psi with this orifice in place. If you're getting both of those, then the throttle control is set. If you're down at 60 psi, then you need to turn the throttle up. If you're at 120 psi, you need to turn the throttle down a little bit. That's kind of how it works. You always want to start with setting it up right here at the tank. Everything downstream plays a large role in it. The size of the discharge hose, which this one is exactly 1 inch. Or if you've got a regulator and everything downstream plays such a huge role in how this works. Start with setting it up off the AOST tank, then you can hook your hose up, and then you can test it at the end of the hose rail to see what your actual pressure drop is. So we're going to let this engine warm up a little bit, top off the coolant, get it fired up, and then I'll be back to show you how it works. One of the first things I check is while the engine's warming up, I do not apply the parking brake. I want to check and make sure the safety interlock's working. See, it says park brake. It means it will not come on without that park brake engaged. So that one interlock there is working. Alright, let's give it a try. We're going to turn this thing on, walk outside, check for any leaks and everything, and then we're going to come back and set the throttle. Maintaining a little over 150 pounds. Compressor is engaged. The hissing sound you hear is actually regulated because it's had regulated pressure already. It's coming out of the regulator right here. You let that run for a while with the oil flowing through the system. Alright, we're getting ready to fire this thing, or getting ready to open this valve up. This is going to get excruciatingly loud with this orifice in it, so you may not be able to see much, but we're going to... Turn it up a little higher. You don't really want to go higher than 2,500 on a diesel. Get you one of these little screwdrivers here. Don't know if you can see. Right there. Right there is really adjusted. Oh, set it down for a second. On our dipster gauge, let's make sure everything's good there. I want to thank everybody for watching this whole series. It turned out to be a lot more videos than I originally planned, but to get the amount of labor into this, it did take quite a while. If you have any questions at all regarding either the VMAC product line, how to install it on the chassis, or if you want to see it done on different types of models or maybe different size air compressors, please comment below. We'd love to hear from you. Please subscribe, give me some feedback. I know that some of the videos are not the best, but we're definitely trying to step them up a little bit. Thank you again so much for watching. We appreciate the support.